I never thought my own daughter would turn her back on me when I needed her most. I never imagined the man she married would look me straight in the eye and tell me I was nothing more than a burden. But that's exactly what happened. My name is Clarissa Vaughn, and I'm 60 years old. For most of my life, I believed family was everything. I built my world around my husband, my daughter Lena, and later, her husband Mitchell. I gave them my time, my love, and every ounce of strength I had left after my husband passed away. But when life knocked me down, they didn't lift me up. They kicked me out, left me standing on the curb with 2 suitcases and no place to go. What they didn't know was that life had one last card up its sleeve. And when I played it, everything changed. So buckle up, because what I'm about to tell you is more than just a story. It's a lesson in strength, justice, and finding your power when the people you love the most try to break you. My life used to be full of warmth, laughter, and purpose. I was married to Thomas for 35 years, and together, we built a quiet, happy life in a small town just outside of Savannah. Our daughter Lena was our pride and joy, the kind of child you pour your entire heart into without a second thought. Every birthday, every school event, every scraped knee, I was there. I never missed a moment. When Thomas was diagnosed with cancer, everything shifted. The battle was brutal, and after 2 long years of fighting, I lost him. Suddenly, the home we had shared became a house full of ghosts. Every room echoed with his absence. I tried to stay strong, telling myself that at least I still had Lena. She and her husband Mitchell offered me a place to stay, while I figured out my next steps. I was hesitant at first. No one wants to feel like a burden. But Lena insisted. "We'll get through this together, Mom," she said with a smile that felt like a lifeline. So I sold my home, packed up decades of memories, and moved into their guest room. At first, it felt like a blessing. I cooked meals, helped around the house, and tried my best to stay useful. I thought I was doing everything right, but looking back now, I can see the cracks were there from the start. Mitchell barely looked up from his phone when I first arrived, offering a stiff nod instead of a welcome. I brushed it off, telling myself he was tired from work or just not used to having me around. But soon, his coldness hardened into contempt. It started with little things. A sigh when I asked a simple question. A roll of his eyes when I changed the channel. His dismissive attitude made me feel like I was intruding in my own daughter's home. I tried harder, cooking his favorite meals, scrubbing floors until my knees ached, staying invisible when they wanted privacy. But nothing softened him. Lena seemed caught in the middle. She offered small reassurances. Mitchell's just stressed. "It's not you, Mom." But her words started to feel empty. And then came the night that shattered everything. I had made a big Sunday dinner, pot roast with all the trimmings. We sat at the table in strained silence until Mitchell set down his fork and cleared his throat. "Clarissa," he said, not even bothering to look at me, "we need to talk about the arrangement." My stomach twisted. "What do you mean?" He finally looked up, eyes cold. "You've been here for months. This was never supposed to be permanent. We have bills, responsibilities. We didn't sign up to support someone who's not contributing." Lena sat frozen, eyes on her plate. "Maybe it's best if you find somewhere else, Mom," she whispered. I couldn't breathe. After everything I'd done, after everything I'd lost, they were kicking me out like I was trash. I didn't fight, I didn't cry, not then. I packed my bags, 2 suitcases holding what was left of my life, and walked out the door. Neither of them followed. Neither of them even looked up. And just like that, I was alone. The first few nights alone were the hardest. I checked into a cheap motel on the edge of town, a place where the neon vacancy sign blinked all night, and the sound of passing cars on the highway never stopped. The room was small and smelled of mildew and old cigarette smoke. I sat on the sagging bed, my 2 suitcases at my feet, and stared at the peeling wallpaper, feeling utterly lost. I texted Lena, hoping for, I don't even know what, comfort, regret, some tiny sign that she cared. First I sent, "I'm safe, I love you." No answer. A few days later, just a heart emoji. Still nothing. My chest ached with every hour of silence, but I told myself she'd come around. Mothers always tell themselves that, even when they know better. I spent my days wandering the streets, looking for work. I applied everywhere: grocery stores, diners, receptionist desks. But every time I got the same polite smile and the same empty promise. We'll let you know. I knew what they were really saying. I was too old, too tired, too broken, useless. One rainy afternoon, I opened the only box of keepsakes I'd managed to save from my old home. It was full of faded photos, birthday cards from Lena when she was little, and a small leather-bound diary, my mother's diary. I hadn't thought about it in years. I almost put it away, but something, curiosity, desperation, made me open it. And that's when everything began to change. At first, the diary was simple. Daily entries about grocery shopping, neighbors' gossip, little notes about me as a child. But as I flipped through the fragile pages, a strange feeling crept over me. Something was hidden between the lines. And then I found it. A single sentence that stopped my breath cold. He came again today. Said he wished things were different. Said he loved me but had too much to lose. Clarissa can never know. My hands shook as I read it again and again. I could feel my mother's shame, her pain, bleeding through the ink. Who was he? What did she mean? I kept reading, my eyes scanning every word like my life depended on it. I pieced together secret meetings, whispered promises, and finally, the truth. My mother had been involved with someone powerful. A man she only ever referred to by his initials, HCW. They had a love affair that was never meant to see the light of day. And then came the entry that changed everything. He said if anything happened to him, Mr. Ellison would know what to do. Ellison, that name rang a bell. I had seen it before, on legal documents Thomas and I once reviewed. I felt my pulse quicken. I grabbed my phone, searched online, and sure enough, Mr. Ellison's law office was still in business, tucked away downtown. The next morning, with my heart pounding and palms sweating, I called. I didn't expect anyone to remember my mother after all these years, but when I said her name, the line went quiet. Then a man's voice, warm but cautious, said, "Clarissa Vaughn, we've been expecting you." A few days later, I found myself sitting across from Mr. Ellison, a kind-faced man with deep lines around his eyes. He slid a yellowed envelope across the polished desk. "Your mother's instructions were clear," he said softly. "This belongs to you." Inside was a letter and documents that took my breath away. My real father had been Howard Charles Whitmore, founder of Carrington Oil and Gas, a man with a pristine reputation in public and a tangle of secrets in private. In the letter, he confessed it all. His regrets, his love, his failure to claim me as his own, and then the promise, a quiet inheritance, bank accounts, investments, and ownership stakes, all placed under my name, waiting for me to claim when the time was right. Tears blurred my vision as I listened to Mr. Ellison explain the details. For the first time in what felt like forever, I didn't feel small. I didn't feel powerless. I was no longer just a woman tossed aside by her family. I was a woman with history, with roots deeper than I ever knew, and with the means to take back control of my life. That night, back in my motel room, I didn't sleep a wink. But this time, it wasn't sadness keeping me awake. It was the fire starting to burn in my chest. They had cast me out like I was nothing, but they had no idea who they were dealing with, and soon they would. After that meeting with Mr. Ellison, my world shifted. I was no longer the invisible widow scouring job boards and praying for scraps. I was Clarissa Vaughn, heir to a fortune I never knew existed. And for the first time in months, I had options. But it wasn't just about the money. It was about reclaiming the dignity and power I had lost. I wasn't looking for revenge. At least, that's what I told myself. But deep down, I knew I wanted something more. I wanted to show Lena and Mitchell that I was never the helpless woman they made me out to be. I spent weeks learning everything I could. I watched YouTube videos about real estate investing, read books on contracts and property management, and met quietly with financial advisors Mr. Ellison connected me with. The more I learned, the stronger I felt. Every new piece of knowledge was a brick in the fortress I was building around myself. And then I saw it. A tiny listing buried deep in a foreclosure auction site. A modest duplex in a middle-class neighborhood. My heart nearly stopped when I read the address. It was Lena and Mitchell's house. The bank was repossessing it due to missed payments, something I hadn't known about. Maybe their financial situation wasn't as stable as Mitchell had led me to believe. The auction date was set for 2 weeks later. I didn't hesitate. I created a shell company, Vaughn Holdings, and placed my bid, quietly, legally, with no fingerprints that would lead back to me. 2 weeks later, I was the new owner of the home where my daughter and her husband had once turned me away like garbage. The first thing I did was send out formal letters through my property manager, informing all tenants, Mitchell and Lena included, that rent would be reassessed according to market value. For them, that meant a dramatic increase, nearly triple what they'd been paying. I knew it would sting. I also knew Mitchell's pride would never let him move out without a fight. He'd stay put, fuming and stewing, trapped by his own stubbornness. Within days, my phone lit up with a number I hadn't seen in months. Lena. I let it ring. Then another call. Then a voicemail. Mom? I don't know if you heard, but something strange is happening with the house. Our rent skyrocketed, and Mitchell's, well, he's not taking it well. Can we please talk? I didn't answer. Not yet. I needed them to feel the pressure they had so easily put on me before. Weeks passed, and through my property manager, I heard bits and pieces of what was happening behind closed doors. Mitchell was spiraling. Angry emails, late-night voicemails to the management company, threats of lawsuits he had no grounds for. Lena was seen crying in the driveway more than once, but I stayed silent. Until the tenant meeting. It was a routine meeting about property improvements, new security cameras, fresh landscaping, upgraded heating. I arrived early, dressed in a sharp black blazer and a soft blue blouse, my hair in polished waves. I sat quietly in the back as my property manager introduced the changes, watching the door like a hawk. Then Mitchell stormed in with Lena trailing behind, eyes downcast. He was loud, as always, demanding to speak to whoever owned the property, insisting on answers. And that's when I stood up. I walked calmly to the front of the room, all eyes turning toward me. I looked Mitchell dead in the eye and said, "Good evening. I'm Clarissa Vaughn, owner of this property. I believe you had some questions." The color drained from his face. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. Lena gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. The room fell silent. Mitchell's bravado shattered right there in front of everyone. I didn't gloat. I didn't smirk. I simply stood there, steady and calm, and said, "If anyone has further concerns about the changes, my team and I are happy to assist. Otherwise, thank you for your time." And with that, I walked away, stronger than I had ever felt in my life. A week after the tenant meeting, there was a knock on my apartment door. I wasn't expecting anyone, and for a brief moment, my breath caught. When I opened it, there was Lena, standing in the hallway, hair pulled back in a messy bun, eyes red and swollen like she hadn't slept for days. She looked smaller than I remembered, like the weight of everything had finally crushed her spirit. "Hi, Mom," she said softly, her voice cracking at the edges. I didn't say a word. I simply stepped aside, and she walked in, clutching her purse so tightly her knuckles were white. We sat down at the kitchen table, the same table where so many memories, both good and bad, had been made. I brewed us some tea in silence. She kept her eyes on the cup, tracing her finger along its rim, like she was searching for the right words. "I don't even know where to start," she whispered at last. "Mitchell's. He's falling apart. Ever since that meeting, he's been spiraling. He blames you. He blames me. Honestly, he blames everyone except himself." I stayed quiet, letting her pour out the things she'd clearly been holding in for far too long. Her eyes filled with tears. "I keep thinking about what we did to you, how we just tossed you aside when you needed us most. I told myself I was keeping the peace, but the truth is, I was a coward. I let him push you out because I didn't have the strength to stand up to him." She wiped her eyes, her voice trembling. "I'm sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry." For a long moment, I didn't speak. I just stared at her. This woman who was once my little girl, now sitting across from me, broken but trying. And despite everything, my heart softened, because no matter how much pain she'd caused, a part of me would always ache for her. "I left him," Lena said suddenly, her words cutting through the quiet like a knife. "Last night. I told him I couldn't keep living like that. I packed a bag and stayed with a friend. I don't know what comes next, but I couldn't stay." A slow breath escaped my lips, a complicated mix of sadness and pride. I reached across the table and took her hand in mine. "That took courage," I said softly. "It's not easy to walk away from something, even when it's toxic." She squeezed my hand, tears streaming down her face now. "I miss you. I miss who we used to be." I blinked back my own tears. Me too. For a long time we just sat there, hands clasped, the silence between us finally starting to feel less heavy and more like a thread pulling us back together. It wasn't a perfect fix. The damage couldn't be erased overnight, but it was a beginning, and sometimes that's enough. When Lena stood to leave, she lingered at the door, looking back at me with watery eyes. "I don't expect you to forgive me right away," she whispered, "but thank you for letting me come." I gave her a small nod, my voice thick with emotion. "Whenever you're ready, Lena, I'm here." She nodded, biting her lip, and stepped into the hallway, pausing just long enough to whisper, "I love you, Mom." And then she was gone. I sat there for a long while after she left, staring at the door, the taste of chamomile still lingering on my tongue. Something inside me, something I thought had died, stirred back to life that night. It wasn't full forgiveness, not yet, but it was the fragile, flickering start of something new. And for the first time in what felt like forever, I let myself hope. A few months passed after that night, and little by little, Lena and I began to rebuild what we had lost. It wasn't easy. Some days, the weight of old wounds felt too heavy to carry, and the silence between us would stretch longer than either of us liked. But we kept showing up. Phone calls, coffee dates, small moments that, over time, started to feel like home again. Meanwhile, the house, the one I had bought out from under them, no longer felt like a victory. It felt like a chapter that needed closing. So, with Mr. Ellison's help, I sold the property, taking the profits and doing something I had dreamed of for a long time. I donated a large portion to a women's shelter, a place for mothers and daughters who had nowhere else to go, like I once did. The rest, I used to buy a quiet little house of my own. Nothing flashy, just a small cottage with a garden and a front porch swing. The day I moved in, Lena helped carry boxes. After we finished, we sat on the porch, watching the sun dip below the horizon. The air was cool, and for once, the silence between us felt peaceful. "I'm proud of you, Mom," Lena said quietly. "You're the strongest person I know." I smiled, my eyes misty. "You're stronger than you think, too," I replied. "You just had to remember." That night, after she left, I sat by the window with a cup of tea in my hands, watching the moon rise. And for the first time in what felt like forever, my heart felt full. Not with anger, not with regret, but with peace. I realized then that real strength isn't about winning battles or proving people wrong. It's about knowing your worth, even when others don't. It's about standing tall, even when you've been knocked down. And most of all, it's about finding your way back to yourself, no matter how long it takes. I am Clarissa Vaughn, and I am finally home.